Today, I'm going to talk about some of the top tips that I've kind of compiled that I think are a good short list to kind of get folks who are interested in becoming private pilots and pursuing that avenue in general aviation and wherever that journey may take them. And kind of the top tips to kind of get you mentally organized. Let's get started. What do we want to do first? We want to think about how we're organizing our money and time or getting our budget in order, our resource budget. So it's not just money, it is time related. Not just our time, but also the time of our instructor, our beloved instructor, who is probably teaching half a dozen other students or more, depending on their whether they're part time or full time into this into their gig. Uh, so money is obvious. We want to try to do our training in as not as little time as possible, but kind of 40 hours is a pipe dream for many people. I've known a couple of people who've been able to do it in just over 40. I did mine somewhere between 45 and 50 hours. But in many cases, you'll hear stories about taking 70, 80 or more hours. I think that maybe that is a bit excessive in some cases. I think a lot of people can finish in 45 to 50 hours if they really organize how they go about their training. They don't have a lot of uh, you know vacations from it, or I've run out of money, so I have to. That's where the money comes in. So I've run out of money, and I got to earn some more and it takes another 3 months before they can accumulate enough training funds to continue. That's going to kind of cost more in the end for many people. So really think about that time. It's obvious we have a lot of us have day jobs. So I had one while I was training. I kind of worked in a lot of planned time off and everything. So or paid time off, sorry, PTO. And so in many cases, I tried to schedule training at 7 in the morning before work for the times I didn't take the day off. But we had summer in the southeast, and there's a lot of fog a lot of times. So the fog burns off at 9 or 10 a.m. It's too late by then for me to, unless I take a half a day to kind of do training. So think about this. We'll get to weather in a second because that's it's related to weather. But have your time in order, and don't think that you're just going to do. Oh, I'm going to do 5 or 6 hours of training in one block. You're not going to get a lot out of it. You're going to pay a lot of money, but I don't think you're going to get a lot out of these huge blocks. So hopefully there's a local airport that's close to you, so you don't spend a lot of time driving back and forth, and you can kind of afford to do that 1 or 2 hour chunk at a time to keep you optimized in your learning capability. Because after about 2 hours, unless you're doing a cross country, that's still requires a lot of thought, but it's not like it's intense practice, from beginning to end. There's a lot of time at cruise altitude, just kind of running through checklists and everything. But if you're doing stall practice and everything, that can make you dizzy, and the flying to pattern all the time. There's just so much going on at critical phases of flight. You want to kind of keep it relatively in line. So anyway, we've talked about that to a large degree. So let's move on. Read the POH. You're going to say fly. I flew a Cessna 152. I read mine end to end. They're stupid simple aircraft. There's not really a whole lot to them. You fly a glass cockpit or something where it's a lot more expensive and a lot more complicated. It may even want to stress this even more because there's just so much involved in a G1000 and kind of getting yourself situated there. But your performance data, your V speeds, and a lot of this other information is just very, very valuable. You want to memorize a lot of them, VX, VY, all those, VS0, VS1, etc. You want to have those burned into your memory. Your general idea about like how long your ground roll is, and things like that for when you're landing and taking off. So you kind of have that. You're still going to do the calculations. Your instructor is going to make you do it, but if you have a head start some of that information. It's going to be really helpful. Best glide, it's a very good number to have, like, kind of burn in your memory. You're going to need it. You're not going to want to pull that out for any kind of in an emergency checklist. Know your medical situation. This is really important. It's something that's not mentioned a lot. And one of the things that is, I'm not going to talk about this too much in detail because I don't want to give any kind of false advice, because it's very controversial in some areas. If you have a disqualifying medical condition, and those can be looked up, you may not have any option. I was going to say that, there is sort of a fork in the road. If you have a borderline option, so if you think about it, like one side is the private pilot, and then the other side is the light sport. If you have a borderline condition where you think that you may or may not qualify for a third class medical, and even if you didn't, then you'd have to spend a lot of time and money to get a special issuance. You may just want to go the light sport route. Again, the disqualifying medical conditions like, schizophrenia or whatever, you may not have any option at all. But if you have something more borderline and you really have an itch to fly, you may just want to go this route. You can always, attempt to do private pilot later on if you want, but this will get you up in the air and less time too. And there are fewer aircraft that you can fly, of course, but they're a lot of fun. You can still take them out to the beach or maybe even to the mountains and everything. You're VFR only, but they're a lot of fun. And if you have that itch to fly, you'll at least get started, and hopefully you'll get to graduate to the next level if you can sort out the medical, get a special issuance or whatever. All right, so yeah, that's something that's just not talked about, but it's something that you'll want to do your own research on. But I wanted to make it apparent for people that that option kind of exists, and your driver's license serves as your medical for light sport. Become a weather nerd. I mentioned this, it ties into the time budget, but it becomes very important that you can organize your lessons. Your instructor should be doing this, but considering they're balancing so many other students, you may want to kind of try to get ahead of the instructor in a sense, or offer suggestions that they just may not be looking, directly to, because you can't focus on one student all the time. So for example, if you just have a beautiful day, it's like spring weather, and it's dry conditions, high pressure system, and just excellent conditions prevail, you may want to take the day off from work and do your dual cross country with your instructor. Just really think about ahead of how you'd want to do your training. So if you're seeing crappy conditions, ceiling is 1,500 feet AGL, and it's just crap, and you'll just do pattern work. So if you have calm conditions, it's a low pressure, it's pretty calm, nothing but maybe light rain in the forecast, if that, and low winds, you'll just do pattern work. And if there's high crosswinds or relatively high winds, and you'd be frustrated by doing pattern work because you're early on in your training, you may do stall practice, slow flight, other things that are safer, where you're just going to do your one landing when you return. So think ahead on the kind of lessons that you'll want to do, and suggest that to your instructor. You may just be providing options that they just didn't think about. Again, not because they don't care or they're not smart enough. It's just because they're organizing so many other students, and each student has a different phase that they're in their flight training, and the instructor is just not capable, mentally, of organizing everything all the time. So make those suggestions to your instructor. Kind of think out a plan that's going to save you on time and everything. And you'll pull your hair out less with, you're scheduling your precious time, resources involved in your training. Research schools. So this goes also to how I was talking about instructors. Some may just, I don't want to say that some may suck, but they just may be very poor at organizing mentally. And you may not have a lot of choices. Maybe you just have one or two local schools, and the other airport is dead. There's no training involved there. And then the one that's close to you, just has a crappy flight school with a couple instructors, and well, you have no other choice other than drive 2 hours away to another airport that has a great school, but that's 2 hours away. It's it sucks, but um, so uh, kind of rate out like how. Again, it's pretty obvious. Just figure out like what kind of instructor works well for you. Uh, Try not to find one that's like a mill where they're just kind of bringing in instructors all the time, and oh, this instructor's it's a part-time gig for him, and he just has 2 hours a week he dedicates to training. And it's always with one other student, and never has weekends free. He's always out vacationing somewhere or whatever. These are all important things to know and kind of get an idea, and it's fine to kind of interview them. So consider that. It used to be a big thing where they would go to airlines all the time, but after COVID, this is not really something that's happening as much. So instructors are sticking around a little bit more. So you have that working for you. So something to think about. So finally, the simulator part. This is really interesting because this is kind of a mixed bag. I'll just give you my perspective on it. Simulators are extremely useful if they're used smartly. And by what I mean by that is for like VFR flying, you have to be very choosy about how you use it. You're not going for your instrument rating yet. You shouldn't be thinking too much about that right now because during VFR, you have your head out the cockpit and you're feeling everything. You're hearing the engine, you're feeling the coordination in your turns and everything, and you're looking for traffic. Now's not the time to kind of hyper focus in the cockpit, and that's the problem with simulators. You just stare at that cockpit, and you're not looking out for traffic. You're not interested in the world out there as much. There are plugins and ways around that problem, but most times people who are using simulators and are kind of just saying, oh, I'm going to learn how to fly after I learn how to do a simulator. Well, the problem is that they're going to stare at that cockpit, and then their instructor's going to have to beat it in their heads that they have to look outside and stare outside and mostly look at just their airspeed, forget about their attitude indicator. Listen for the tachometer, maybe look at it initially, but then listen for it, feel the coordination. You don't have to look at the ball as much. Your turn coordinator is not really a big deal because you're not doing standard rate turns and everything. And your heading indicator, well, you're looking outside and you're flying the pattern. You're just kind of looking at where you are relative to the runway, perpendicular or parallel. It's going to obviously play a bigger factor when you're doing your tracking VORs and everything. You're going out to practice areas and coming back. But there's so much visual stuff that the simulator is going to work against you in that regard. Now, having said that, where it's used smartly is for procedures, for busting out your checklist, your beautiful laminated checklist that you printed out, and you're going through it, and you're getting these things ingrained in your memory, especially for engine out, or any kind of engine fire or anything. Those you want to have more ingrained in your head. Yes, you can pull out the checklist, but in real life, you lose your engine at 2,000 feet, you're getting on the ground in quick order. So you're not going to just be like, where's my emergency checklist? Let me go through this stuff. No, you're going to want to have most of that kind of burned in your memory. Achieve best glide. Look for a place to land. Keep flying the plane. Those kinds of things. For your normal procedure checklist, it's fine to, be nice, calm on the ground, and you're going through everything. But it's still useful to go through those steps in succession. You're just going to be a much better pilot all around just to kind of doing that. So this is where it shines, and it's going to shine, as you go into instrument training, of course, that's where it's really going to shine for you most. I use it all the time to maintain proficiency in instrument training. I feel pretty good about flying, and I don't fly to minimums, but I fly to 800 feet, and I feel really good about it, even though it is different than a simulator. You feel they get the spatial disorientation things that can happen. I still feel really good flying under those conditions. Would I fly in the minimums all the time just using simulators? Maybe not, but I don't fly to 200 feet, so it's not my thing. I think that's about it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, or like and subscribe, and I'll put a link to my email address. And hopefully, this has been very useful. This medical situation thing is just not something that's talked about a lot, and it's controversial because some people say, oh, if you already know you have a condition, you can't go to light sport route. It depends. Do your research, but some people just kind of give that sort of uh, you know negative representation there. So, but this is something to think about when you're getting ready, because you need your medical when you solo, and you don't need it necessarily when you doing your dual training. But after your 15 or 20 hours, whenever you're converting to solo, you're going to have that already. So why spend all that money if you get disqualified? So get your medical early, get it done. And especially if you're going to zip through your training, because you're going to get a good 2 years out of that or 5 years, depending on your age, of that medical. That's about it. And hopefully it's been useful. And thanks a lot for listening.